Hello, my glorious people of the Halloween-verse. It is I, Halloween Dan, and it isn't Halloween anymore. Sad times. I'm here today with my little ghosty friends, because you know what? I've reached that point which I reach every year, where now I miss Halloween again. It's only been, a week? And Halloween now has settled back down into my brain, and I am missing it once more. So what I thought I'd do is have a little discussion about my love for Halloween, where it kind of stems from. I did a video a bit similar to this time last year, but not gonna lie, not a lot of views. So I'm not feeling too guilty about doing this again. So join me while we try to unravel this mystery of what it is about Halloween I really love. Ooh. So I've been asked many times through the years why I go crazy over Halloween. What is it about Halloween that I love so much? As I said before, I am a guy, I'm in my 30s, I'm from the UK, England specifically, and for someone in my age group, and I'm a guy, and I'm English, it's unusual. It isn't a very commonplace thing. There are people like me who love Halloween, but we are few and far between, at least to go to the level that I go to. Let's put it that way. Through the years, I've been asked a lot where it comes from, what is it about Halloween, why do I settle on Halloween all the time? And I've analysed it a lot myself over the years. I don't honestly know the full reasoning behind why I love Halloween. It's just awesome to me. I just think there's something about it that speaks to me. I've talked before about me having sort of like a weird sort of spiritual, almost spiritual link to Halloween in a strange kind of pagan-y kind of a way. But there's more to it than that. So what I'm going to talk about today is a few key events that sort of happened in my life that I think made me love Halloween. And this is kind of like an open question too. I'd love to hear from you guys on this one. I'd love to hear a comment or two about what it is that makes you Halloween obsessed. You know, what is it that makes you obsessive over Halloween? Because that's what it is for me. It is an obsession. You know, it's November and I'm already thinking about what I'm going to do for next Halloween, what I'm going to buy, what I'm going to do, where I'm going to put things. So that's an obsessive, isn't it? That's an obsessive thing when Halloween is a full year away and I'm already thinking about it again. So what is it? I know there are people out there who think this way too. So why? What is it that drew you to Halloween? What was it that made you obsessed over Halloween? Was it how you grew up with it? I'd love to hear, whatever it is. I'm just going to have a sip of my spooky cup of tea. For me, there were a few key events that sort of took place throughout my early life. Like I said in a past video, growing up in the UK in the 80s and the 90s, Halloween was a really kind of small, almost unintelligible thing. It just didn't take place on a massive scale. Nobody really did it. We did it a little bit because it was my cousin's birthday on the 31st of October, so we would celebrate her birthday, usually with Halloween being the theme. It was the obvious theme. But as a kid, I didn't register Halloween as an event. I just thought, oh, this is a fun way of having a party, pretending to be a monster. And that was how we celebrated Halloween for many years. And I've spoken before about a sort of magical instance where we had a pumpkin and we were pretending it was a cauldron, and the magic of Halloween. That in that moment, I was probably about 8 or 9 and we were dancing around. It was dark, we had a lit pumpkin, we were pretending to make magic spells, the moon was out, the trees were shifting in the breeze. And that sort of moment resonates with me ever since. Ever since that moment, years later, it still is the perfect image of Halloween that I concoct in my brain every year. This kind of not particularly scary, just kind of eerie and spooky. There are other instances too, and I'm going to talk about one of them now that is, I don't know whether it paints me in a particularly good light. I'm going to tell the story anyway. So I was probably about the same age, 8, 9, 10 maybe, and we at the time lived on a street where there were a lot of kids, lots of kids. We all grew up together. We played on the street together. It was a great neighbourhood to grow up on. In that neighbourhood of kids, I was always kind of the odd one out. I was a bit weird. I was a bit eccentric. I would say weird things. And the other kids knew this about me and would sometimes avoid me, I'm not going to lie. But there were, I was still friends with most of them. We still played and hung out. And there was two kids in particular. They were brothers who lived on the street. They were very similar in age. I think there was about a year between them. And they were the ones who I always wanted to play with the most. The thing was with these brothers, though, was they were them kids who kind of just, everything kind of came naturally to them. They were good at sport, they were good academically, they were good in every field that they put their brain to, and they knew that they were good at it too. They were not particularly humble, let's put it that way. They knew that they were good at stuff and that they were better than me at stuff. So it was kind of always a bit of a love-hate relationship I had with these kids, because they just always went on about how better at things they were than me. Halloween comes along and we're sat at home and my dad comes in with this enormous pumpkin, and I'd never seen a pumpkin so big, and he was like, we're going to carve this pumpkin, let's carve this pumpkin. So we set to, we carve the pumpkin, he cuts it open and takes out all the junk inside and carves a nice little face. We light it up with a candle and it was magical. We turned the lights off and we're looking at this face we just carved on the pumpkin, and it was magical and beautiful, and it resonates with me still to this day, this moment, this Halloweeny moment. Soon after, there's a knock at the door. And stood at the door, trick or treat, are these two kids, these two neighbourhood kids. And they have with them two little Swedes. Now, if you don't know what a Swede is, it's a hard root vegetable. And in the UK, it was always traditional, going back generations, to carve a Swede, not to carve a pumpkin. And they're very hard to carve, and they only get so big, so you can't ever make a very impressive carving on these things. And obviously most people choose to carve a pumpkin nowadays just because it's a bit easier and you can do more impressive stuff. But they'd carved these little Swedes, and they were both holding these little Swedes, and like, look at our Swedes, aren't they good? And I was like, wow, yeah, look at those Swedes. Look at our pumpkin. And my dad had to bring it because it was too big, and he shows them this pumpkin, and their faces just dropped. You could see it on their faces that we beat them. And I could see it on their faces. And I have to say, it was probably one of the few occasions that took place in my childhood where I outdid somebody. And I know that isn't the point, and it's not a very wholesome message in a kind of a way. But because these were the kids that always beat me, they beat me at everything. They were always better. I never beat them at anything. Suddenly, here was this pumpkin that we'd carved. It was 10 times better than their little Swedes. It was 10 times bigger than their little Swedes. And they were impressed. They were like, wow, look at that. And we were like, yeah, okay, see you, bye. And shut the door. And knowing in that moment, that very brief moment, that we'd done something better than they could do it, it was like elation for me. I really was overjoyed by that moment. So even though it's a bit of not a very nice memory in a weird kind of a way, it still to this day resonates with me. And I think it's these little things, the magicalness, the fact that I love the autumn time, these little events that took place throughout my childhood where I kind of, the artistic nature of me and the sort of imagination side of me could outdo them, people like these two kids as an example. And it was one of the few times of year where my sort of imagination could go to town and I could achieve stuff that I wouldn't be able to achieve the rest of the year. So yeah, it's a weird mixed message, that one, but it did mean a lot to me at the time. Couple that with my love of American TV shows and movies. I mean, when I was growing up, Hocus Pocus was my favourite movie. I think it still is, if I'm honest. Halloween vibes that would come off movies like that. And then the TV shows like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, where they'd always have a Halloween special. And it was always kind of magical and spooky and fun. I loved all that stuff. And I'd watch it as a sort of pre-teen, thinking, I'd love to be able to do that. I'd love to be able to have a party like that. I'd love to be able to put decorations up like that and have fun like that. And those sorts of things that I would see on American movies and films and TV programs really did sort of enter my brain and never left. And to this day, I'm still trying to recreate how Americans do Halloween and trying to make British people want to celebrate it the way Americans do. And yeah, I don't know. I think that plays a big part in it. There are other things. There's lots of other things. I'm sure if I wanted to really psychoanalyze myself. I think a big part of it as well is that because, again, it isn't a massively celebrated thing in the UK. It's something that I think I bonded to it because growing up, I always felt a bit like an outcast. I always felt a little bit sort of not the same as everybody else. And everybody else had their thing. They had a sport or a hobby or something they were good at. And don't get me wrong, I'm good at some things, but I never had a thing that was mine, you know, something to grab hold of. And when I realised that I could do Halloween better than other people, I had an imagination for it. I could create things in a spooky kind of a way, and I could do a party that no one else would even think about doing. I really grabbed hold of it with both hands and ran. And I think that's a big part of it, the fact that it's something I can do that others maybe don't do, wouldn't think to do, or couldn't do, perhaps. And again, that's a bit of a weird message, I suppose. I'm not sure that's overly positive. But I think that because I grew up not having a particular thing that I was good at, being able to be good at Halloween and being really interested in Halloween, that became my thing. And as I got older, it was a thing I was recognised for. People would start, that's why I called myself Halloween Dan on my YouTube channel, because people would refer to me as Halloween Dan. That's Halloween Dan. You know, the guy with the loads of Halloween stuff, Halloween Dan. I don't know. There's a mixture of reasons why I love Halloween. The biggest reason of all probably is that it's just awesome. That it's just fun. That it is magical and mysterious and cool and ancient, and that it has a real tangible history and a place in our lives, that it's so linked to the autumn time, and I love the autumn time. There's a myriad of reasons. I could go on forever, but I'm not going to, because a big part of this video, I really want to hear from you guys. I know I'm not the only one that is obsessed with Halloween. I know I'm not the only one who thinks this way about Halloween. And I know I'm not the only one who probably occasionally goes, why am I so obsessed with Halloween? I've never really quite figured that one out. I'd love to know what it was that drew you to Halloween. Was it from your childhood? Was it something you grew into as you got older? I just would love to hear where you sit with this whole thing, where it came from, why it is that you settled upon Halloween and love it more than anything else in the calendar, because that's how I am. So anyway, guys, thank you for watching this rambling video. It probably will be the last rambling video for a while. I might get back into doing sort of some reaction videos soon, because there's some great things to react to now. And I'll see you in the next one. Keep it spooky. Bye.